This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we're here to bring a little sauce to your steak, maybe a little cheese to your cake. We are talking about the episode Bart After Dark, and of course, joining me in the dark, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How are you today, Rich?
I'm glad you said joining you in the dark and not already seated very well and hidden in the dark itself. So I appreciate that, Miles. I appreciate that very much. I'm doing fine and dandy like sour candy. I feel like we got a bit to talk about with this episode, but it's going to be some fun. So let me throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the Eugene and Rusty. It is Miles. That's right, you're both.
I get to be both. Great. Well, sir, we do have a lot to talk about today. This is an episode that I remembered very fondly, one that I had strong memories of. Felt like I was pretty much prepared for what I was going to see in terms of remembering what the main plot about this episode was.
Yes.
And I will say that I may have been a little bit surprised. My feelings toward this episode are not 100% what I expected them to be, but I would like to discuss it thoroughly before we get to that. Again, we are talking about Bart After Dark, which originally aired on November 24th, 1996, and the plot of this episode was loosely based on the 1982 musical comedy The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
I've never actually seen that. I've heard of it a few times, but that might solve some of the issues I had with the episode.
Oh, interesting. You have issues we got to talk about. Love it. For now, we'll start at the beginning, because we did not have a chalk gag, so we're just going to go ahead and skip right through that. Surprise, surprise. I will say, brand new couch gag, and I absolutely loved it. Woo! It's basically the Simpsons tribute to the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover.
Yeah, it was really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was really neat. The episode officially opens at the Simpsons household, where we see Bart and Lisa are watching Itchy and Scratchy, of course, but suddenly the TV goes blank.
Dad! V-chip!
And Homer's like, oh, sorry, my fault.
I don't know if anybody even remembers what a V-chip is at this point in our lives, Miles.
The V-chip was a concept that was very much made fun of in the South Park movie, if I remember correctly, but it was a real-life device that they actually had essentially a primitive way by today's standards for parents to control what their children were watching.
I could definitely imagine Marge having it set to block that, or just that, like, factory default has it blocking Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah, that's going to be something that doesn't exactly slide under the censorship radars.
Yeah.
But I do love, though, it's just funny because the kids just immediately scream, like, Dad, fix it. And he's like, without even thinking about it or, worrying about what they're watching, really. He's like, oh, yeah, click.
Or how a lot of parents were with their kids watching The Simpsons.
Accurate, though. I would say that The Simpsons was definitely more subtle than Itchy and Scratchy, we'll say.
How can that be when Itchy and Scratchy is part of The Simpsons?
I was thinking that as I was saying it, but at the same time, I feel like it makes complete and total sense.
It's very Simpsonian of you, Miles. Way to be subtle.
The kids are watching the episode Good Cats, Bad Choices, which is set in a talk show setting. Where I think it's Itchy is saying that Scratchy is saying that his mouse friend mistreats him.
And then Itchy, being the stereotypical victim that he's not, has a little description saying that he feels like he's the victim, and then he goes on stage with a broken bottle to go after Scratchy.
Well, and I love, too, Itchy is sitting in the back watching all this unfold on a TV monitor, and it's very Jerry Springer, circa 1990s. Like, yeah, just... It has that feel to it, and it's really wonderful.
I felt like this is more of a Maury Povich situation, but, I'll give you the Jerry Springer one.
I think that either work. I mean, yeah, totally. But this episode of Itchy and Scratchy is actually interrupted by a special report. And I like, before it says what the report is, Homer's like, someone found my keys!
Yeah.
Yes, Homer, that's what the news is about. Of course, it's actually Kent Brockman of the Action News Desk. A massive tanker has run aground on the central coastline, spilling millions of gallons of oil on Baby Seal Beach.
Oh no!
It'll be okay, honey. There's lots more oil where that came from. And this, of course, is the moment that sets up our B plot for the episode, because Lisa and her activist heart are immediately moved by the idea of Baby Seal Beach. And let's be fair, what kind of monster isn't going to be at least a little bit worried about Baby Seal Beach being covered in oil, right?
I feel like this might be the most accurate B plot that's ever existed on The Simpsons.
You know, I'll give you accuracy, but I will say I was not really that entertained by the B plot on this. I feel like it was like a fun idea that like removes Marge and Lisa from the situation, but ultimately the only joke that was any good was like the oil rolling back up on the ocean after they just cleaned it, but we're not even close to that yet.
I honestly thought this was the C plot because I forgot it existed until we started talking about it.
That's fair, actually. This could definitely be considered the C plot.
the baby C plot.
So we see an interview where Captain McAllister is actually, you can tell he's trying to kind of dodge the blame. He actually offers somebody $100 cash to like take the fall for him.
On camera.
On camera, yeah. A cleanup effort is already underway, and as always, the first to pitch in are those unsung heroes, Hollywood movie stars. And we cut to Rainier Wolfcastle, who is holding a cute little seal and scrubbing it clean.
This isn't about publicity. This is about cleaning off gunk.
And his very hot girlfriend, who's standing by holding a bird egg. As a Golden Globe nominee, I just think it's our duty to make the real globe a little more golden.
And the freaking egg hatches while she cleans it off.
On cue. Lisa, again, is completely moved, and she immediately starts begging, we need to go help clean up the beach. We'd be doing our part for the environment. Plus, we'd get to clean up all those cute animals.
Honey, we don't need to drive 400 miles to clean animals. You can stay right here and give the dog a bath, or trim the cat's nails.
Oh, and Snowball comes by, and it looks like the person from the Guinness Book of World Records that has the nails that just keep going for far too long. But yeah, she's like titter-tattering, so to speak, the noise she's making as she scratches across the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, Mom, please! You can make this my birthday and Christmas presents!
You already used up your birthday and Christmas presents on that peach tree we got you, and you hardly ever play with that anymore.
Yes I do. Sure I do. Look! And we just peer through the window of the kitchen as we see Lisa goes and kind of like rubs up against the peach tree and tries to pretend that she's close to it. But it actually works.
I think she just more annoys Marge into saying yes than anything else.
That's fair. But ultimately, Marge agrees that she will take Lisa to help clean up the beach.
And then she's explaining to Homer what needs to be done while she's gone with Lisa. And, Homer's really good at listening.
And yeah, you can totally see the gears churning as Homer is 100% paying attention to what his wife is saying in this moment. Now the cat needs his medication.
No problem.
Every morning, and the furnace has been putting off.
Can do, right? Uh-huh.
A lot of carbon monoxide, so keep the window open.
Gotcha, cat in the furnace.
I think we'll take Maggie with us.
Does the cat not go in the furnace, Miles?
Well, I think that's probably where you would put it, you monster.
Excuse me, you. You avid cat destroyer, you.
Yeah, that's me. And if anything happens, just use your best judgment. Just do what I would do.
Good save, Marge.
So the girls drive off, leaving the boys all alone at home, and it doesn't take long before Homer and Bart just look at each other and say, all right, see you at dinner?
What time?
You know, I don't know.
Shall we say 10?
All right, just wake me up. I like that he has his priorities straight. You know that he would prefer to be woken up for dinner.
But I love how it cuts to like later that night at the dinner table, and they actually have the TV on there, and it's clearly dark outside.
Yeah, that's true. And they're eating the TV dinners like in front of the TV. And as you might expect, it really doesn't take long for things to start already go poorly, I guess you might say. Because Bart's already skipping brushing his teeth because, as Homer says, he already rinsed his mouth out with soda.
And this is after they watched the World Series of bumper cars, which I'm very interested in seeing.
Well, I like how Bart actually takes the Coke and like gargles it as if it were mouthwash too. So, a lot happening here.
Wait, you can do that, Miles?
Gargle soda?
Yeah.
Can you not?
For brushing your teeth?
Oh, yes. Yes, kids, please listen to The Simpsons for all of your dental advice.
Use your V-chips and wash your mouth with soda.
You know, I will say, though, I fondly remember the idea of this pairing where we get this idea that Lisa and Marge are going to go off and leave Homer and Bart to, like, kind of get into trouble on their own. But rewatching this episode, I was a little bit disappointed by this B-plot. Like, really nothing happens. And that's kind of the joke. Like, that's, I guess, the idea is they just kind of live in their own filth. And then Bart, of course, will end up getting into his own form of trouble. But this first act is really somewhat blah for a Simpsons episodes in a lot of ways. There's some funny moments and there's some good jokes, but it just doesn't really feel like much really happens.
Well, and inevitably they will get back and Marge will become a part of the A-plot, and it's like, was the excuse they had to get Marge away so that the other shenanigans could happen? And if so, is that the only reason that she's not there in the first half of the episode? Which, I don't really want to throw this term around toward the Simpsons writers, but would that be a little bit of lazy writing, perhaps?
I don't know if I would say that much, but I guess it could be. I don't know. It doesn't. It just doesn't feel like it has the same sort of charm that a lot of times when you have these first acts that kind of do their own thing, they're still really fun. Like the even like say last week when we saw him at the cider mill, like that's a ridiculous place to have the Simpsons, but it's still, there is some really good humor running into Ned Flanders. The foliage conversation, like all of that felt really interesting versus Bart and Homer just kind of ignoring each other. And as we're about to get into, now we see that when Lisa and Marge get to the beach, all of the cute animals have actually been cleaned by the celebrities. So really all there is to do is clean up the rocks that are left on the beach. The non-photogenic rocks, I might add. Thousands and thousands of them, though.
Oh.
Marge, I love, is like, ugh, I've got rocks at home that could use washing.
But she's like pissed.
Yeah, she's upset about it. You can tell, like, I think there's like this inner turmoil in Marge in this episode where ultimately what her daughter is asking to do is very noble. Like, it's a good cause and it's not selfish in any way, shape, or form. So to begrudgingly say no to her daughter would be wrong. So instead she begrudgingly says yes and just kind of drags her heels the whole way.
Well, and that kind of, when you're talking about the B plot here, is kind of my major issue. I said I had a lot of issues with this episode. My major issue, and I guess it's the only one, but it just feels so big to me, is this whole episode felt just a little unnatural in general to me. Like the pacing of it and the way they get into the situations and the way they respond to the situations. I felt like it was just slightly off the whole time, and just the whole structure. And I don't remember feeling that way ever before this last time watching it. So I don't know. Maybe I was just in a mood, but it just...
No, I feel you with that on the pacing specifically. And maybe it's because it's also the first time I felt this way about this episode. I agree with you entirely. It could be to do with the nature of how we've been running the show and just the fact that we've watched the evolution of this show. And frankly, we've been running on such high episodes, and I just mean like such like well-received, great episodes that even an episode like this, which, spoiler, won a fucking Emmy, by the way. Like we'll talk about it for sure. But it's clearly not a bad episode at all. It's still a very good episode, but it does feel like a little bit of a step down compared to some of the episodes that we've been previously reviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've said the song at the end of this episode is possibly my favorite Simpsons song on the Throwdown Thursday podcast like a year ago.
Sure.
So
yeah, I definitely, I'm going to save my thoughts on that till we get there, because that's for Act 3, and we're still in Act 1, but there's we're on the same page. The pacing is off. I think that Act 3 is actually almost like 10 or 11 minutes long, which it's only a 23-minute episode, so it's very, very unusual, but
let's catch up to it.
Continuing on with Act 1, again, Lisa and Marge are just washing rocks, and it's very ungratifying work. Back at home, Homer and Bart are starting to realize that maybe they have let things get a little bit too out of control, because there's literally about 3 feet of garbage just entirely throughout the living room. And Homer even says finally, "Geez, look at this place. We've got to do something."
Garbage angels?
And they both throw themselves into the heap of trash and start making garbage angels, which I will admit, that's a beautiful visual, and that's a fun moment between father and son. Again, not shitting on this episode. It's a good one. It just feels a little bit awkward in places.
Dad, I think I need some fresh air. Can I go to the park?
Do I have to sit up?
No.
Knock yourself out. Parenting, baby. So Homer is left lying in the trash. That sounds worse than it is, because he's choosing to be there. While Bart goes to the park to meet up with his friends. And he actually runs into Milhouse, who is flying an RC airplane, which I have to say was the dream toy when I was a kid. I always wanted one of these, never got one. Probably would have broke it or crashed it pretty quickly. As you well know, I did get into RC helicopters later on and have still a lot of fun with those to this day. But I never got the RC airplane, and it's a lot of fun watching Milhouse fly it around. Well, I would think it's fun, but Nelson starts to point out that it's really boring just watching him fly straight and level. He wants to see it crash into stuff.
And then Bart wants to see it crash as well, so you know what it's time for.
I do love, though, Milhouse is just so smugly, like, perfectly level flying is the supreme challenge of the model airplane pilot.
I felt like that was a line directly taken from Miles's life, even though this line occurred before Miles's time with helicopter flying. Seeing helicopters flying around your apartment living room all the time is both fun and dangerous, but yeah.
Hey, I got pretty goddamn good at that.
You did. Trying to land it on the ceiling fan?
Yeah, I could land on a ceiling fan blade at one point.
While it's moving. No, I'm lying about
that would have been intense. Yeah, that's dope. So Nelson gets frustrated with this straight and level flying and actually grabs the remote. And it starts flying towards Martin and Ralph, who are also enjoying the park. They're out in a paddle boat.
I love this pairing, by the way. Like, I want to see more Martin and Ralph.
Ah, it's gaining on us.
I'm pedaling backwards, which is the correct thing to do in that scenario, Miles.
Ralph is actually on his game here, yeah.
Yes, like if you pedal backwards, it should just fly right over your head into the water, right?
You would think.
Ralph's on his game.
We also see the RC plane has a close call with Monty Burns, who has decided that he doesn't like being out of... The airplane also has a close call with Monty Burns, who has decided that he doesn't like being outdoors.
For one, there are too many fat children.
I think this is funny because this is kind of a dated joke, because they're basically implying that Martin and Ralph are fat, and by today's standard and the rate that child obesity exists, like, I don't even know that Martin or Ralph would really register, and they actually do point that out themselves on the commentary, I will add.
Well, even like Nelson, Bart, and Milhouse have a little chub if you're going to go on that route.
Yeah, a little belly. But like 90s belly, not like 2019 belly. That's a lot of belly.
All right, now we've just alienated the whole audience with children, so good job, Miles.
Perfect. The RC plane bounces off of Smithers' head, who dived in front of it to protect Burns, of course, and then it actually ends up crashing into a mysterious old house that we've never seen before. It has a giant fence going around it, and it, of course, says, "No trespassing."
Apparently, it's just sitting there in the park.
Yeah. Milhouse is a little bit pissed off, but, like, you know, it's Milhouse talking to Nelson, so he's not bowing up by any means. Thanks a lot. Now it's stuck in that haunted house.
I heard a witch lives there.
I heard Frankenstein lives there.
You guys are way off. It's a secret lab where they take the brains out of zombies and put them in the heads of other zombies to create a race of super zombies.
Oh, wow, that's the house? Bart is kind of, like, ignoring these guys and, like, whatever, dudes, I can get this. And he actually just scales the fence and hops right up a pole and onto the roof of this house, where he is very successful at his mission of getting the plane back.
Succees. That's the way you spell success.
I love that he fails twice here, both in failing and falling, because he takes a big bump off of the roof and ends up landing in a bush, but not before taking out a gargoyle on the way down, which of course crashes to the ground below. He actually clutches to a rain gutter for a while before falling, so it's not that brutal of a fall, but it was a brutal fall for the gargoyle for sure.
Yeah, and he almost could have maintained his grip if it weren't for that damn little caterpillar.
I like that something so innocent is what caused his downfall, because a caterpillar coming across the ledge of the roof crawls right across his fingertips, tickling him to cause him to fall.
And he's like, help, I'm gonna die, while he's laughing.
But pretty much right after we see that Bart is okay in the bush down below, we see a mysterious woman appear, and as the kids identify her, they say, "Oh no, the witch has Bart!
We gotta hurry!"
And the old lady, who we have never seen and do not know, is actually tugging Bart by the ear and shows up on the Simpsons' front door.
Ding dong.
Just a minute. Hello? And we see Homer answer the door wearing a brown paper grocery sack.
Your son was trespassing on my property and destroyed a very valuable stone gargoyle, and are you wearing a grocery bag?
I have misplaced my pants. And he says it just like that, like so prim and proper. Possibly like one of the most formal things Homer has said on the show, honestly.
It was because he's so terrified that he misplaced his pants. It's super serial, Miles.
The woman suggests that the boy should be punished, but Homer quickly points out that the boy doesn't like to be punished, so why is he going to
work?
Yeah.
Fine, I guess I'll just have to wait and come back and talk to his mother.
And immediately that causes Homer to tense up with fear, and he agrees that he will, in fact, take care of the punishment. No need to involve Marge. But quickly he realizes, "Aw, I don't know how to punish you. What does Marge usually do?"
She makes me taste beer.
Come on, boy. Give your old man a little credit. And right as he says this, there's a small pause before the bag that he was wearing, that we assumed was empty, bursts from the bottom, and a bunch of like fruits and vegetables, just a bag of groceries explodes from Homer's crotch.
Now, all of you out there, you know that this will come up for one of you at least, where one day you're going to misplace your pants and have a grocery bag, even though no one gets the bags anymore, and you're going to have to wear them, and you're going to thank us for this moment. Take the groceries out first.
Take the groceries out first. That's the moral of this story. I will say that for an episode that I had mentioned that rides a lot on the song, I'll say, there are a couple of moments in this episode that are actually very popular Simpsons memes, and of course, this is one of them.
Absolutely. Grocery baggerino.
So, the Simpsons men have determined that to pay off his debt, he's going to be doing chores. He tells Bart, "You're going to do chores for that lady until you work off the damage you did. It's called responsibility." But as Homer drops off Bart, he drives away and he accidentally runs into her mailbox. And instead of stopping and taking responsibility, he drives away, fleeing the scene. And that's when we see this woman let Bart into what we think is her haunted home for the first time.
You know, Miles, I do want to point out, you always say that Bart is an influence on you. We are a lot like Bart. I should have brought this up sooner. We are climbers of the fence when no one else will climb the fence and are too scared to climb the fence on Halloween to the creepy old abandoned shack on the other side of the apartment fence.
I'm always down for climbing into things I'm not supposed to get into.
We are like Bart. I feel happy now. I can die a happy man.
Well, in this moment, Bart is very unhappy. He's actually kind of griping. I can't believe I've got to spend all my free time dusting dollies in a smelly, rundown dump for a creepy old witch. But as soon as he gets that sentence out, a curtain is pulled back, and suddenly we realize that this is no haunted house, sir. There is some scantily clad women's dancing around, and a lot of menfolk from town enjoying the sights and sounds of what appears to be a brothel in Springfield.
Lady, I gotta tell you, I have been grossly misinformed about witches.
And that actually is going to bring us to the end of our first act. We're going to take a very short break, and we'll be right back for Act 2 of Bart After Dark.
Okay, Mr. Most Days Off. Now we're ready for the TeePublic ad.
Head over to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly right now to support our show. Get yourself some Best Darn Diddly merchandise and help grow our podcast. I messed up there. Can I get another take?
Okay, just a second. Out of the way, amateur. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to patreon.com/bestdarndiddly. Go to popthreads.com and save 15% with the discount code Simpsons. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to bestdarndiddly.com to get all your podcast needs from the greatest show on earth. Learn from a professional, kid. All right, Krusty. We're ready for your take. Krusty?
We come back for the start of our second act, and we see that Bart is absolutely blown away for this opportunity that he has now found himself in. Wow, man! What is this place?
I prefer not to be called man, Miles. My name is Belle, and this is the Maison Derrière. That means the, back house.
Belle explains that this is a burlesque house, or a private club where gentlemen can play some cards and see a show. And almost immediately, one of the dancing girls comes in for like a bra change and sees a big tub of bras, and Bart volunteers for his duties.
Normally, we don't allow children in here, but your father was so insistent.
He's tough but fair. I'll start sorting these bras.
That's a bit advanced for you, but I know a stopped-up sink that needs some attention.
Just glad to be on the team, ma'am.
I guess good for Bart.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Belle. Belle is what would appear to be a sophisticated Southern woman, we'll say, and she's voiced by Tress MacNeille. Now, originally, they were kind of shopping around the idea of getting a celebrity to come in for this part, and it does feel like the type of role that a lot of times a celebrity might fill on The Simpsons, but they did not arrange for anybody to take on the part, and they felt that Tress MacNeille did such a wonderful job with the character that they just went forward with her voicing it instead of pursuing somebody else.
Yeah, for some reason I always pictured it being some kind of guest star, and then when I was watching the episode, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it does feel, again, like you almost like are like in your mind, like trying to figure out, like, is that somebody, like, or is that somebody I should recognize? But Tress MacNeille, of course, is a full-time voice actor on the staff of The Simpsons and has done a lot of characters on the show. But this is definitely one of the more prominent featured characters and that takes kind of center stage for the episode.
Nicely put, my friend.
Despite Bart's attempts to try to be the bra sorter, he's actually given the position of the doorman. He's told that
Pretty big.
That's actually kind of a big deal. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. But, you know, he's got to do the old greet and toss. No problemo, right?
How did I ever get along without you?
And we get a fun little sequence in another very popular meme. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this one, actually. Grandpa Simpson comes in the door, hat in hand, whistling along. He hangs his hat, sees Bart, and does an immediate 180, picking up the hat and walking right out the door. He does stick his head back in, though, to ask a very quick question.
Is your name Bart?
Mm-hmm.
What the? Does your father know you're working here?
It was his idea.
In that case, I'll have a whiskey sour.
I like how quickly that changes Grandpa's mind.
What I liked is that because, when you see it in meme form, you don't get this. But after he hangs his hat the first time and he turns around and sees Bart, he actually makes that little tiny noise. It's a oop, and then turns back around. And the oop is so damn funny. And I think it's highlighted just because you've seen the meme so many times that you forget that the oop exists.
Is actually there. Yeah.
But that made me bust out laughing when I heard that little tiny noise, which, if you remember some of our other podcasts, the little noise like ba, and snip, those always get me.
Oomba snip.
Sniff.
We cut over to check in with the Simpsons women again, and again, it's Lisa and Marge, and they're just scrubbing rocks, and even Lisa admits, there's just something very unsatisfying about this, and she thinks she knows what it is. And just in that moment, an entire wave of oil, it looks like they just finished cleaning all of the rocks on the beach, and a fresh wave splashes all of the oil back all over everything that they just did, basically leaving them in a way that they've made absolutely no progress. Even though they have, it just doesn't feel that way.
Lisa, I know it's frustrating, but we made a commitment, and we have to see it through, no matter how unpleasant.
And just then, the man who's organizing the cleanup comes by in his Jeep. Quitting time? Okay, scrub up and head on in for the communal tarp. We're having kelp burgers. And we're going to watch a tape of Johnny Arvik. He's the Eskimo comedian. It just takes a moment of even hearing this, and they immediately decide, fuck this, we're out. And they jump in the car and drive off. And even Lisa is like, faster, Mom, faster.
And that's the end of the B-plot.
That pretty much sums that one up. I mean, that again, like you said, we'll see at our next act break that we needed a big reveal moment, I guess, for Marge.
Yeah, that's, I guess, the whole reason that Marge had to leave.
But for now, we're back at the Maison Derriere. Oh, that was our MZ Melzetz. He's got out of bed too fast and broke his hip.
So who's going to warm up the crowd tonight?
Well, whoever fits Mel's tuxedo. And she pulls out a very tiny, I would say approximately a 10-year-old boy's size tuxedo.
Eep.
The jokes are in the breast pocket. If you get in trouble, there's a switch that makes the bow tie spin. And then we actually see Bart doing a pretty damn good job of reading some jokes that he did not write for a group of men that are there to see ass and titties.
Nudist colonies are everywhere these days. I'd love to go, but I...
And he kind of squints at the card for a second.
Can't get the wrinkles out of my birthday suit.
But
But I gotta tell ya, Adam and Eve must have been the first bookkeepers. They invented the loose leaf system.
But
If there's a bad bookkeeping joke, I haven't heard it.
And again, apparently he's working for a pretty easy crowd, but they just laugh.
What are they there to see, Miles?
True. But again, Bart held his own. We cut back to Evergreen Terrace, where we see Homer is once again watching the news. This time the announcer says, "It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?"
I told you last night, no!
At least Homer's honest and annoyed.
Where is Bart anyway? His dinner's getting all cold and eaten.
And he's the one eating it. Homer drives over to the Maison Derriere to see what's happening. He just
So he did know where he is.
in. Yeah, that's true. He lied, didn't he?
Yeah.
Bart, where are you? Come on. I have to be up at 6 a.m. to swipe Flanders' newspaper. That's a fucking early commitment for Homer to get a newspaper.
It shows he can get up early. That's why we always see him getting up at like 5:55.
I guess so. Homer takes just a moment to kind of absorb what's happening, though.
And he's staring at a picture at this point that's hanging on the wall.
President Eisenhower celebrates 40th wedding anniversary. Not pictured, Mrs. Eisenhower. And of course, he's surrounded by dancing women. I'm sorry, this is all my fault. Bart was filling in for...
I don't care if he was filling in for Mel Zetz. He's my son. I don't want him working.
Homer so nailed it.
So late that...
And this, of course, is when Homer becomes distracted by the scenery, we'll say, of the Maison Derriere.
I kind of had an issue with who was on the stage dancing at that point, though. Did you notice?
No, who was on stage?
It was Princess Cashmere, who Homer has had a run-in with in the past in a storyline related to, like, teaching Bart the right way to treat a woman.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, I feel like they did that on purpose, but, you know.
She's the one that got away, I guess.
Maybe so.
So, even Belle starts, like, Homer's no longer paying attention, but Belle's like, oh, I agree. Kids need rules and boundaries.
Yes, everybody loves rules.
It's so tough to be a parent these days. What, with all these gangs and the drugs?
Oh yeah, drugs. You gotta have drugs. Hey, he didn't pay the cover.
Oh, Bart, he's your father. We'll comp him tonight. Start a tab tomorrow. I also like the next guest. There's a lot of the best parts of this episode are honestly just like the little encounters at the door that Bart has. Like this one here,
yes,
with Skinner is really great as well. Skinner walks in the front door, but he doesn't immediately recognize the doorman.
No, I hope I didn't miss the floor show.
Nope.
Is Roxanne back?
Yep.
Did she get my flowers?
She did. And it's at this moment that Skinner looks up and realizes that he's been talking to Bart this entire time.
Hello, Bart.
Hello, Principal Skinner.
This is the National Air and Space Museum, isn't it?
I like that he went national. Like that's how far he's pushing this pretend. This is very much the same joke as steamed hams, just not turned up as hard.
Well, that's what Oakley talked about, where they just wanted to keep the perpetual line going.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So finally, the word must have gotten around to the busybodies of the church crowd because the Simpsons doorbell rings, and when Homer answers it, he sees the quote-unquote God Squad, which is, of course, made up of the Lovejoys and the Flanderses.
This might have been my favorite line in the episode, and I don't say that hardly at all on a podcast form, but Homer's response when he sees who it is got me cracking up.
This isn't going to be about Jesus, is it?
All things are about Jesus, Homer, except this.
Both of those lines are so perfect. Reverend Lovejoy is, of course, upset because Bart's been working in the burlesque house, and he says that Principal Skinner saw him with his own eyes, and Skinner immediately steps up to kind of defend himself.
That's true. But I was only in there to get directions on how to get away from there.
And this is when Ned starts to counsel Homer a little bit.
Homer, I'm as permissive as the next parent. I mean, just yesterday I let Todd buy some Red Hots with the cartoon devil on the box. But you can't possibly think it's appropriate for your 10-year-old son to work in a burlesque house.
Oh, no? Well, if Homer Simpson wants his 10-year-old son working in a burlesque house, then Homer Simpson's 10-year-old son is going to work in a burlesque house. And this is the moment when we see Marge is just walking up the driveway, and immediately Homer tries to save. Hi, now Marge, you're going to hear a lot of crazy talk about Bart working in a burlesque house. From me directly just now in this moment.
Yes.
And that awkward, caught in the middle of a passionate tirade about how his son works at a burlesque house, and Marge finding out is how we come to the end of our second act. We'll be right back to turn the lights on one last time with the conclusion of Bart After Dark.
Hi, I'm Drew.
I'm Nate.
And I'm Tanner, and we are the hosts of Headline Heroes.
Every week we take a bizarre, out-there article,
Germans build underground pipeline for beer,
and attempt to create a superhero or villain.
The obvious one is that they have a giant robot that runs off of beer.
Along the way, we discuss powers, design a costume, and of course, struggle with a name.
Gram Sam Sam? No.
Sam, no!
And inevitably, we get off subject and talk about the really important stuff.
I did go to Bill Engvall's website, and I just want to tell you a couple of things I'm seeing here.
Please do, I wish you would. But we always arrive with the super creation we are proud of. Join Headline Heroes every Tuesday as we try to make reality a little more super.
We come back for our final act, and basically Marge is not only upset that her son is working at a burlesque house, she's just shocked in general to find out that there is a burlesque house in Springfield. She's actually playing with the Maison Derriere matchbook, which as you kind of fold it and unfold it, it looks like it's winking at you.
Homer, did you know it was a burlesque house when you sent Bart to work there?
No, I only learned that 4 days ago.
What were you thinking, sending Bart to such an awful place?
I was trying to punish him exactly like you would. So in a way, you really dropped the ball on this one. This is your mess, and I'll be damned if I'm going to clean it up.
And that totally works on Marge.
Not even a little bit, of course. Marge decides that she will take matters into her own hands, though. She's going to go have a little conversation with Belle herself.
Yeah, and she says she wants a favor from Belle to close the place down and move away from Springfield.
That's a pretty reasonable favor, right?
Springfield doesn't want places like this.
I think I know what Springfield wants, sugar.
Oh, I've lived in this town for 37 years.
I've lived here 52 years.
I'm third generation.
6th.
Get out of my town!
I like that Marge just breaks down, like, really quickly here.
Yep.
Belle goes on to explain, we're just as much a part of Springfield as the church, the library, or the crazy house. Actually, it's kind of funny because in this sequence, Belle very much is the reasonable good guy. I mean, Marge is absolutely kind of flipping her wig and kind of being rude in a roundabout way. I mean, as you pointed out, she legit said, like, will you please move and leave? I mean, that's pretty much puts her on the wrong foot, even though she's trying to take the moral high ground. But Belle even calls Marge neighbor at one point, and Marge is just not having it.
Sleazy entertainment and raunchy jokes will never be as popular as sobriety and self-denial. Yeah, she's on the losing side of this one.
Yeah. Marge actually gets pretty emotional at this point, though, and I will say this is pretty like, I would imagine, like, if you were on the receiving end of this from a lady like Marge, you might have a little bit of fear in your heart.
You're about to learn the 2 most dangerous words in the English language are Marge Simpson.
And I love that as she does that in such a threatening manner, she immediately goes to the door, but then she's so polite and kind to the valet. It's the light pink 87 wagon.
But, I mean, this is a little foreshadowing. She may be right, Miles.
That sleazy entertainment and raunching jokes will never be as popular as sobriety and self-denial.
Yeah, sure, kid.
Later on, we see that there's a town hall meeting. And did you catch the sign, Rich?
No, I didn't catch the sign this time, or I don't remember catching the sign this time. What did it say?
So it announced tonight, town meeting. Tomorrow, town meeting bloopers.
I did not catch that. Wow.
So good.
Nice job, Miles. I'm proud of you.
And we have Mayor Quimby is addressing the residents of town. And after visiting the area for the past 2 months, I have determined it is not feasible to construct a super train between Springfield and Aruba.
Oh.
And he takes off his sunglasses that he's been wearing to reveal that he's clearly been vacationing in Aruba because he's got, like, sunglasses tan. Now, next on the agenda is the Citizens Committee on Moral Hygiene.
Oh.
Marge, of course, stands up.
I'm here to share my moral outrage, but this time it's not about that giant inflatable Dos Equis bottle. It's about a certain house in our town.
Yeah, well, what's wrong with this house? Is it the plumbing?
No, it's a house of ill fame. A house of loose ethics.
Is there a building code violation? A drainage issue? A surveying error?
The house is perfectly fine.
Well, then quit bad-mouthing the house.
Yeah, leave the house alone.
I love the misunderstanding between Marge complaining about the actions occurring in the house versus the actual problems with the home's construction.
And that's when Marge actually says that she's talking about the burlesque house, a house of drinking, gambling, and debauchery.
People, this is an issue that we as a town are strong enough to ignore. Let us give no more scrutiny to this bawdy house and its small clientele of loyal perverts.
Oh, I'm afraid this problem goes far beyond Eugene and Rusty.
And the two called out perverts sit there and chuckle. Uncomfortably.
And this, I think, is a very shady tactic by Marge. I watching this as an adult, I was like, oh man, she basically just blackmails the town into agreeing with her.
She outs a lot of people right here. Yeah, she has a slideshow prepared.
Where'd the pictures come from?
She has a slideshow prepared where basically she's, like you said, outing everybody who's visited. She's got pictures of them either leaving or entering the building.
And first is Dr. Hibbert.
And this is a great little sequence where basically we're going to have a bunch of people like Dr. Hibbert and Mrs. Hibbert's like, Julius! And then Chief Wiggum.
Clancy!
And then when it's Chalmers, it's Chalmers who says, Skinner?
Seymour!
Mother! Then there's Patty and Selma, Brandine and Cletus. Mo, they show Barney and it just sits there silently until Mo is finally like, Barney.
Clancy.
Hey, come on. You did me twice.
Smithers?
And this is actually kind of a funny little thing here. It's just a joke, but it is, I guess, a chronological error at the same time because, Smithers responds to this that his parents thought it would be a good idea, implying that they were trying to basically have him not be gay, is the joke here, of course. But in a later episode, we'll actually find out that Smithers never knew his father because he died while Smithers was still a newborn. So maybe a stepfather situation, but just interesting that doesn't really line up.
Very interesting indeed. They forgot about the old maison derrière.
Yeah, apparently.
The old back house.
I also enjoy they have a picture of Mayor Quimby and Lou Han, Milhouse's mom, calls him out.
Mayor Quimby?
That could be any mayor.
Because, his eyes are black. Everyone's eyes are blacked out in the pictures.
Right.
I don't remember if we mentioned that or not, but you can clearly tell who they are without their eyes.
In light of these new facts of which I now realize I was largely aware, I must take action. All in favor of demolishing our beloved burlesque house, raise your hand. Almost nobody does.
Yeah, except the God Squad plus Marge, basically.
And I we cut to Jasper and Abe, who are just now realizing what's going on.
Are they talking about the bordello?
No, the burlesque house, so just keep your mouth shut. Like so many episodes of The Simpsons, this devolves into an angry mob. I even like Skinner says, oh, there's no justice like angry mob justice.
I'm gonna burn all the historic memorabilia.
I'm gonna take me home a toilet.
Well, there better be two.
So the angry mob politely rings the doorbell for the intercom, and Ned is the one that explains who they are.
It's an angry mob, man. Could you step outside for a twinkle while we knock down your house?
And Belle clearly has experienced this before. Just a minute. So this breaks down into the mob literally destroying the house.
Whoa! First of all,
smashing.
Lovejoy is way too good with a crowbar, Miles. He just pops that fence right off. And I'm wondering, I need some more backstory for Lovejoy now.
This is not the first house of ill repute that he's had to break into, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
Clearly. But finally, somebody has to be the voice of reason in this town. And who better to be that voice, Richie, than Homer J. Simpson?
Yeah, well, it's at Bart's behest, because Bart's like, do something. They're going to destroy Belle's house. My friends, stop!
This is such a fun little setup that's going to pay off way later, but Hans Moleman had just pulled back his bow and arrow with a flaming arrow on it, and he's very strenuously saying, "Please hurry!"
Sure, we could tear this house down.
And immediately the mob goes back to cheering and destroying the home again.
No, my friends, stop! Let me finish!
And this is when we see Homer start to break off into song.
You could close down Moe's or the Quickie Mart, and nobody would care. But the heart and soul of Springfield's in our maison derriere.
And at this point, we actually see from the inside of the house, a piano player pushes a piano out onto the porch and starts playing a jaunty tune that quickly turns into an entire musical ensemble.
We're the sauce on your steak, we're the cheese in your cake. We put the spring in Springfield.
We're the lace on the nightgown, the point after touchdown. Yes, we put the spring in Springfield.
We're that little extra spice that makes existence extra nice.
A giddy little thrill at a reasonable price. Our only major quarrels with your total lack of morals.
Our skimpy costumes ain't so bad.
They seem to entertain your dad. Doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doo-doo-doo.
The gin in your martini.
The clams on your linguini.
Yes, we keep the boing in Springfield.
We remember our first visit. The service was exquisite.
Why, Joseph, I had no idea.
Come on now, you were working here.
Without it, we'd have had no fun since March of 1961.
To shut them down now would be twisted. We just heard this place existed.
Da 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 da.
We're the highlights in your hairdo.
The extra arms on Vishnu. So don't take the
boing.
We won't take the whoop. Yes, let's keep the in Springfield.
And this song right here makes the episode great in its own right. It's such a wonderful song, so much so that they won an Emmy for it. And there's a lot to talk about in it. I love the lyrics, of course, the music. The fact that they made sure that visually speaking, that's part of what I was mentioning when I talked about the guy pulling the piano out. They didn't have any sound effect in this entire song that did not have a visual response to explain why it was happening. And it made it so funny because towards the end, during the song, we of course have the piano. There's the jack in the box that makes the boing. The slide whistle, which is actually just Sideshow Mel with a slide whistle. There's the trash can lids as cymbals, but as the piece breaks down at the very end, there's a whole lot of sound effects, and we see things like Krusty throwing a pie in somebody's face, groundskeeper Willie accidentally hitting somebody with a sledgehammer, the cops, Wilgum and Lou, I think, maybe, or two of the men of the police force do like a chest bump that causes a sound effect. I like the Burns rolls up in an old-timey car that explains some, yeah, like honk honk. And finally, even the boat captain, I guess finally is the burp, but the boat captain, McAllister, is fishing in the, like, pond, I guess. It's not a pond, a fountain is the word I'm looking for. And finally,
looking sober this time.
The big crescendo at the very end is Barney letting out a very large belch.
Yeah, man, and I alluded to it at the top of the episode that on the Throwdown Thursday podcast, I said this is probably my favorite song in all of Simpsons, which is saying a lot because the whole Dr. Zaius and all of that is fantastic, and Monorail is fantastic, but this song I feel like gets less attention and people seem to forget about it a lot, and it's just a fantastic song. I always love saying, the point after touchdown.
That is a good one, for sure.
Yeah, I just feel like from a Simpsons fan perspective, a lot of people forget about this song is what I was alluding to on that.
That's fair. I do think it's overshadowed, and I think rightfully so, by Dr. Zayas and Monorail, but I do very much enjoy this song a lot, actually. And obviously it's impactful, because immediately the God Squad has changes of hearts. I love Ned Flanders is just immediately on board.
Well, I'm convinced the house stays.
This house is a very, very, very fine house.
Nice one, Lovejoy.
But almost as if on cue of missing everything, Marge comes rolling up with a steamroller, or no, a bulldozer is the right word that I'm looking for. And immediately everybody, like, I think Homer is even like, "What are you doing, Marge? Didn't you hear the song?"
No, I had to rent a bulldozer.
Well, we all changed our minds. Yeah, now we love the house.
What about the sleaze and the depravity?
It was a very convincing song, Marge.
Mm-hmm. There were kicks and everything. Oh, can you sing it again?
I'm sorry, it really was one of those spur-of-the-moment type things.
Well, I also have a song to sing.
And, oh my god, this is my favorite joke in the whole fucking thing. It really is. Because in this moment, the flaming arrow that was set up like 3 minutes earlier, if not longer, just comes whizzing by Marge's head and sticks into a tree nearby.
Don't make up your mind until you hear both songs. Morals and ethics and carnal forbearance.
And unfortunately, while she starts getting into her song, she accidentally hits the brake lever on the bulldozer, which sends it just destroying about a third of the Maison Derriere.
Oops. Sorry.
Thanks a lot, Marge. That was our only burlesque house.
I do love it when you drop by, Marge. Next time, why don't we get together at your house?
A little salt from Bill. Marge does ask, to be fair, if there's any way that she can make it up. And you know what? Bart has an idea.
Oh, there's a way, Mom.
And we next see that the missing ventriloquist act that was at the Maison Derriere is now being covered by Marge, who is on stage with her doll Twiggy.
So, Twiggy, I hear you and your husband, Woody, just had a baby. What did you name him?
Chip?
Only
Only this time, that super easy crowd that Bart was working earlier, goes completely silent. Except for one man, her very supportive husband, who has an idea on how she might improve her act.
Take it off!
And then Bart, acting as the bouncer, has to come by. All right, Dad, you've been warned. Let's go. And Homer getting thrown out of the Maison Derriere for heckling his own or catcalling his own wife is how we come to the conclusion of Bart After Dark. Richie, is there anything else that you or your guidebook would like to say before we get on out of here?
The guidebook just wanted to point out that Quimby's wife and Princess Cashmere made both of their second appearances, even though I think we've seen Cashmere in the background quite a few times, so I'm not going to go off that. I want to point out that the fact that Marge brought the attention of this burlesque house to the entire town probably helped business for the burlesque house. So she kind of, I'm assuming she hurt her own ideas with that one. And then during the song, Krusty and Wiggum move around a lot. Like at one point they're up on the second story hanging out the window, and the very next instance they're like outside with everybody throwing pies and doing everything outside together. And I was like, man, these two, for as big as they are moving around at like flash-like speeds. But other than that, I did just want to bring up again that the whole pacing of this episode just felt very different to me. And maybe it's because the second act is so quick and short, but like I just felt a lot of the moments were kind of forced upon us a little bit to drive the story. And it's very, very minor, but it just like, after watching so many episodes so intensely over and over again every week, it seems like this one just had a slightly different feel to it. It's still a very fun episode. I know every time we talk, and it sounds like we're being negative towards an episode, it feels like we didn't like it. I still really enjoyed this episode. I felt like maybe this was one where I built it up in my mind to be more than it actually is. But the song definitely still holds up to this day.
100%. And in regards to what you were saying about Marge, I will say I don't think that's the first time we've seen that aspect of her. She kind of gets blinded by her like moral outrage. An example would be when she was trying to protest against Itchy and Scratchy. Like, we talked about the idea that probably she's actually going to end up doing more harm than good because people are going to be like, ooh, that cartoon's controversial? Now I have to see it. And, like, to your point, like, people are going to be aware about this house that might otherwise not have been, since it's clearly been in town for a while now, and we're just now hearing about it. As far as the pacing goes, agreed, awkward a little bit, definitely a ridiculously short second act, and I will say that, again, I enjoy this episode. It's still a solid Simpsons episode. However, it is heavily reliant on the song to keep itself as highly ranked as it is. If it did not have Spring in Springfield and this didn't have the big musical number and just kind of ended with, even if it had the same results, but they did it without doing it in the form of that song, I really think this one would have been more of a dud than it ended up being. I don't want to call it a one-trick pony, but it really heavily relies on the Spring in Springfield.
On top of the numerous memes made from this episode.
On top of the numerous memes, but yeah. But that will do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Make sure you follow us online at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. Richie is at TheWiz_Kid23, and I am at Mr. Most Days Off. That works everywhere. Please give us a follow online.
And please, if you want to, hit us up on TeePublic, on Patreon, and that third one that I always forget.
More importantly, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this Simpsons journey through the Golden Age and beyond. Richie and I are once again going to be back to review another Simpsons episode next week, and we so hope you'll come along for the ride once again. Please tell your friends. Download the episodes, all of that cool podcasting stuff. Next week, Richie and I will be back to discuss A Millhouse Divided.
This podcast is a very, very, very fine podcast.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.